Emma Maiden is Head of Advocacy at Uniting New South Wales and ACT, which leads the Fair Treatment campaign to change unfair drug laws and increase health services. Please welcome.
Thank you for that, Stan. It is very humbling to be part of such a distinguished panel here tonight. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are here on Gadigal land tonight and pledge my personal support to work for the achievement of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, Voice, Treaty and Truth. Now, for many years now, many years ago now, we decided it really was not any of our business, let alone the business of our laws, to judge people on what they got up to in the bedroom, and so long as they were consenting and of a certain age. We took who people choose to have sex with off the law books, and that was that. No fine instead of jail, no consequence at all. Yet with drugs, the public mood, it's very different. Some people tend to be very judgy about people who use illicit drugs, even behind closed doors. And they'd probably say, if you asked them to justify their position, well, it's because illegal drugs are harmful. But I would say that is completely misleading. It's a red herring. All drugs, illegal or legal, are harmful if overused or misused. We're told there's no safe level of alcohol consumption, and yet drinking is part of our national culture. It's celebrated and embedded there. And there are many, many things that are harmful, yet we don't make them illegal, which brings us to tonight's discussion topic. Is it time to legalise drugs? I'm sorry to disappoint you, but Uniting doesn't actually support legalisation of drugs, but we do support the removal of criminal penalties, and we do support no consequence being an outcome of being caught. We've been campaigning for this in New South Wales and the ACT since 2018, and it's a pleasure to have Marion McConnell in the audience. It was so instrumental in that being part of our what Uniting was campaigning for. The Church passed that resolution in 2016. And we've been doing a lot under the Fair Treatment banner. We have been very busy, and we're very proud of the things that we've done. You know, we walked from Dubbo to Sydney to highlight the lack of health treatment services in the regions. We made a film about it and premiered it and all around the state. We launched a paper in New South Wales Parliament on what good decriminalisation looks like, and the current Premier came along to that launch. We made animated videos to explain good decriminalisation. We lifted up the stories of people with lived experience in the media. We did independent polling in 6 New South Wales seats that showed even in the most conservative seat of Baulkham Hills, if someone is caught with a small amount of the drug ice, 54%, a clear majority of the people think they should only have a caution, warning or referral to health and education services. It rises to 71% if you introduce the idea of a fine and non-custodial options. That's in Baulkham Hills, the former police minister's seat. We trained supporters as keyboard warriors to combat negative media online. We expanded our partnerships. Drug Policy Australia is one of our partners, and to include other faith organisations, community organisations, unions. We campaigned in Dubbo for drug rehabilitation services, and we won. And we began our campaign in Tamworth. And last year alone, we met with over 35 members of Parliament in their local electorates with Uniting Church congregations. So we've done a lot, and we've had a lot of impact. But among those achievements, there are 2 things that continue to disappoint us and have at times felt quite immutable. And the first is the really staggering lack of political leadership across the whole political spectrum. Now, in the United States, they have the John F. Kennedy Profile in Courage Award, and they created this to recognise public officials whose actions demonstrate the qualities of politically courageous leadership in the spirit of Kennedy's 1957 book of the same name. And we need a prize like that in Australia. So we can call out and celebrate political courage. And I reckon, Bob, if it existed back in 2001, you would have won one of those prizes for setting up the injecting centre that Uniting now runs in King's Cross. And I'd award it today to Anthony Albanese if he acted on the sentiments from a speech he made in Parliament in March 1999. That was when John Howard showed none of the political courage he showed a few years earlier with gun laws, and he scuppered the heroin trial. So back then, Albanese said, "It's simplistic to say that decriminalising illicit drugs, sanctioning safe injecting rooms or undertaking heroin trials sends youth the wrong message. To my mind, the sort of message it sends is that drug dependence is a medical, not a criminal problem. But it is not the heroin per se that causes all these problems. It is often the criminalisation of the supply and use of heroin." Well, hear, hear, Prime Minister. But our current media and social media landscape, it doesn't reward courage. It rewards small targets. And we all know it. We know, don't say what you really think if you're a politician. Don't become a target for vocal minorities or non-representative parts of the media. Don't lead, on anything. And look what's happening in New South Wales Cabinet right now. They had the $10 million ICE inquiry. It handed down its 109 recommendations in January 2020, over 2.5 years ago. The government ruled out 5 recommendations straight away. And then in December 2020, it was reported that maybe the response was going to go to Cabinet, and there was this flurry of media activity, and the usual vocal minorities started mouthing off about how the government was going to be soft on crime, if it even considered the most modest diversion scheme. And then we hear nothing for another 1.5 years until just about a month ago. Again, reports in the media, something's happening, something's going to go to Cabinet, another modest diversion scheme. And again, Cabinet balks, and it's all quiet. And this week's budget, nothing at all, not even for increased treatment services. So let's be clear about these diversion proposals we've read about in the media. They are not leadership. And they're not leadership because they are bad diversion. $400 fines, you only get 2 chances. Only the city initially, not evidence-based, not genuinely directed at reducing harm. And they're also not leadership because they didn't get up. So I simply despair at the state of public policy and political leadership in this country when Parliament takes the time to ask an eminent person to gather the evidence. They listen to the experts, they have public opinion on side, but still the government fails to implement what they recommend because they're too scared of a bad headline. Such a shame. And what's even more frustrating is the fact that implementing diversion in New South Wales doesn't even require the government to change the law. New South Wales already has an infringement scheme for all drugs and all places on its books. It only needs a change in the government's policy about how that law is used. And until we have a bold and courageous leader on side in Cabinet, I'm worried this situation will never change. The second issue I do want to touch on too that has continued to disappoint us on the Fair Treatment campaign is the casual and endemic discrimination and judgment of people who use drugs. We see it in the decisions not to fund alcohol and other drug health services, in the NIMBYism about the location of services, the failure of people to try and understand the complexities of addiction, the failure of people to see the hypocrisy in their attitudes to people who use drugs, yet they use and overuse legal drugs. I shouldn't even have to say that people who use drugs are simply that, people. As varied and complex as any other group, with a spectrum of use of drugs from occasional to social to problematic and a variety of reasons, from enjoyment to trauma-related, which is exactly the way you could describe people who use alcohol. And these are our grandparents, mums and dads, uncles, aunts, siblings, children, friends, and dare I say, I think there's some judges in there too. People who use drugs live in our communities doing the same daily routine as the rest of us. They're regular people, they are good people. They're people like Kevin, who's in the audience tonight, who spent many years helping out his neighbour with MS, including 2 a.m. phone calls to come help with personal care and changing the sheets when things went wrong in the middle of the night. And they're people like Robbie, who we know from the injecting centre, who volunteers to help others. And my friend and colleague Alice told me a police officer once said to Robbie when he was volunteering doing peer education at the injecting centre, he said to him, "Junkies don't volunteer." Shame on that police officer, and shame on anyone and everyone who's thought this way and not accepted the equal worth of every human being. No one should have that simple act of taking a drug or possession of a drug and have a criminal consequence. That we know the criminality can reduce someone's opportunities in life, but we know that the harm that flows from that criminality, because if someone might want help or advice or even just transparency about a part of their life, that criminality is a barrier to asking for that or receiving it. Look, it's not all doom and gloom. We have seen some movement recently in the ACT, and we're hoping that that lands with a good diversion scheme. And we're not giving up here in New South Wales. In fact, uniting, we're trying to involve more faith partners in our campaign. And on Monday, we'll be having a interfaith prayer service at the State Library at 10 a.m. I think there were some brochures in the foyer. So the Fair Treatment campaign is not going away, and we would really love to have you all on board in that fight.
Drug Policy Australia is a fully tax-deductible charity. If you'd like to help save our young people from the harms of prohibition, please visit the donation page on our website. Thank you.